Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Goaltending, where your why is bigger than your excuses. I'm your host, Will Bland, and today we are diving into one of my favorite topics to discuss, which is mindset and how it affects your emotions and reactions. And we're going to get a little bit into relationships as well. With a very special guest of ours, I'll get into introducing her in just a second. First, I want to say thank you. We sincerely appreciate you tuning in and allowing us to be a part of your journey, because this is all about you. It's about helping you grow, about helping you achieve the goals you set out to achieve, and about living the most fulfilled life possible. All we ask is that you subscribe on your listening platforms, leave a 5-star review, comment, and join the conversation. And if you find the information useful, share it with someone. If it helped you, it can help them too. Now, without further ado, our guest today, educational background-wise, has an undergrad in communication from Morehead State and a Master of Arts in Marriage and Family Therapy from the Louisville Seminary.
Mm-hmm.
Two fantastic pieces of education to add to the conversation. And professionally, she's a licensed marriage and family therapist, having worked in a variety of settings with different populations over the past several years, and is now a director of therapeutic crisis stabilization program. She brings a humanistic and Rogerian therapy approach. And don't worry if you don't know what that is, we're going to ask her and we'll get into that. And really, she's a compassionate and devoted daughter, sister, and friend. Katie Hockenberry, welcome to the show.
Ooh, thank you. Thank you.
So happy to have you here today. I already love where this conversation is going to go because, from being friends for several years, we've had tons of just valuable conversations.
Yeah.
And when I started doing that, I said, she's somebody I need to have on the show to have a conversation that can really impact people in the way that they think. So just first off, let's let the audience learn a little bit about you. Just tell us about you and a little bit about what you do.
Okay, cool. Well, first though, thank you. I'm honored. Seriously. I'm honored that you wanted me to be here and be part of this. I'm excited. So about me, that was a good introduction. I've been doing therapy for I say 9 years because I count whenever I was in school because I think that counts. It was real therapy work. Okay. It counts. Yeah. So I've been doing it for about 9 years. I've done it, like you said, variety of different settings. I've done in-home therapy. I've done work with kids, adults, families, just any range of diagnoses, presenting issues, whole bunch of different things. Currently, just recently, I got promoted to that role where I'm a director of the crisis stabilization program.
Congrats, by the way.
Thank you. So it's a lot. I mean, it's good. I'm excited, but it's heavy work, right? So it's crisis level work. When I'm not doing that type of work, I try to spend time with friends. I've got 2 cats. We didn't mention them. We got to mention.
I left the cats
it's okay.
Out. That's my fault.
No, it's all good. So so friends. I bought my own home last year, so spend time doing home stuff, and I don't know what else to say.
I'm glad you hit on those things because as I talked about the education and, the professional background, I love that you bring in the important things, the relationships, the life outside of work.
Right.
Now we have our professional goals, we have financial goals, but really what we want to get into today is those relationships.
Yes.
Is it mindset and relationship goals? So that's the focus today. And I know this is going to be exciting. So let's jump into, I had to look it up myself. What is a Rogerian therapy approach? Can you tell us a little bit about that? Why that is an approach that you use?
Yeah. So first, like when you're in school, getting a master's in any type of therapeutic background, you learn all sorts of models, right? So I know a whole bunch of different models, bits and pieces of them. The cool thing when you go into your career is you get to kind of pull out what might work for the client, for the treatment plan, for the specific goal, what might work, right? So the Rogerian is something that I like to stick with, or just kind of, it feels very intuitive to me, and that's important in what I do. And it's very, very person-centered. very person centered. I'm not the expert, right? Yeah, I know some things. I did some studying, but I am not the expert of this person's life. They are. So, another big piece, empathy. Huge driving force in Rogerian is empathy. So that's something really huge to me, to be able to see things as another sees it from their perspective.
That makes perfect sense. Because no two people are the same.
Right, right.
We all have different backgrounds, have experienced different things. You could have two kids grow up in the same household, and while they might experience a lot of the same stuff, they still don't have the exact same set of experiences and things that they've been through.
Exactly right.
So that's fantastic. I love that as an approach. That sounds like it would be an effective way to approach, kind of like situational based, basically. Like I look at that and with empathy.
Yes, it's not rigid at all. So I like that too, right? Because structure's hard. It's important, but it's hard. But this allows for the flexibility of like seeing the person as they are.
That sounds like a solid approach. I'm not an expert on that, but she is. So one of the first questions I want to jump into, and we've had this in conversations before a little bit, a brief background in the military. I completed the course and have done instruction on master resilience training. And what that is a course that teaches 14 different skills, things like goal setting and learning about thinking traps and different things like that, to build up 6 different core competencies, which are basically just 6 like core skills to have. So the 14 skills taught in the program build up those 6 skills. And one of my favorites to talk about, where we really get into mindset, is the ATC model. And what that is there's an activating event. You have thoughts about whatever happened, heat of the moment thoughts. That's not what you think about it later. That's what you think right when something happens.
Moment. Okay.
And your thoughts are what drive your emotions and reactions. I love teaching that model, because when you break it down and you evaluate an event, you say, this happened, this is what I thought in the moment, and this is how I responded. And when you break it down, the only thing you have control over in that scenario is your thoughts. You can't control the event that happened, and your emotions and reactions are a direct result of what you thought. So the main thing that it focuses on teaching is thoughts, identifying thinking patterns that you have, thinking traps you get into. Just wanted to give a brief introduction of that to ask you, do you use a similar model to that, or teach clients about that to get into like thinking and their mentality?
I'd love to know, or just learn for myself more about it. I remember us talking about it in the past. And what it reminded me of the most at that time, and still today, hearing you say it again, is cognitive behavioral therapy. So that is where you kind of like picture it as a triangle, right? So thoughts, actions, and behaviors, they're all connected. And so you can tap into any situation, and you can say, what was your behavior? Let's see how it connected to what was your thought in that moment. How did it connect to I'm sorry, I think I said it wrong. Thoughts, behaviors, emotions. Got to have the emotion piece. So yeah, any situation, kid on a playground gets mad, pushes another kid. I kind of rewind back to that situation with the kid and say, what were you thinking in that moment? What emotion were you feeling in that moment? Okay, how did that kind of connect to that behavior? So it's more of a behavior approach model kind of, but what it reminds me of with the model you just shared is the thinking. So it really pulls out, what's your cognitive distortions? Do you have catastrophic thinking? Do you have black and white thinking? Do you have really like impulsive type of thinking? So what it kind of pulls that out. Do you have a lot of negative self-talk? Is that kind of your thought? And it pulls those things out. And how do we reframe, redirect, and work on that thinking?
Absolutely. So that really took it more in depth, and I think that's what the ATC model is, the foundation that you start with. Okay. So it's one of the first of those 14 skills that you use as the foundation, and then you get into identifying patterns in your thinking and thinking traps like downward spiral, scatter shot. There's multiple thinking traps and patterns of thinking that you can have that are not productive to the actions that you want to take.
Yes. And I like thinking it of a thinking trap. I'm going to remember that for future therapeutic use.
Definitely.
And maybe personal.
Definitely keep that one. So how does mindset and the way we think impact our confidence and our motivation toward our goals?
Yeah, good question, because I really think of everything as very connected. People will come to therapy for maybe a behavior they're struggling with or a mindset that they're struggling with, right? But then we got to talk about how is it connected to everything in your life? Is it your health that might be impacting some of this? Is it your thinking? Maybe you aren't reaching a goal that you want to reach, and it's impacting how you're feeling, your confidence level. If someone's not confident, or if someone does not have the resources or the support system to kind of build up their confidence, it really is hard to have change that you want to change. It's hard to kind of turn from I'm doing this line of, or I'm on this path, I really want to be on this path. It's hard to do that when your mindset's not there and your confidence not there.
I agree 100%. I also think that that's going to lead into a couple other conversations that we'll have a little bit later on. So I don't want to spoil anything.
Ooh, okay.
So I'll leave that piece right there. We'll circle back around.
I love it.
One thing that I believe we've also talked about some, and I know I've even shared some materials with you on, is gratitude.
Yes.
An incredible emotion. I talk about it often. I even on social media do Tuesdays where I share 2 things that I'm grateful for and try to encourage other people to share and think about a couple things that they're thankful for the day. And there's a ton of credible resources out there that even talk about writing down 3 things you're thankful for at the end of every day. So a lot of focus, and a lot of people talk about gratitude and how you can use it on your journey. Do you put a heavy focus on teaching, talking about gratitude with your clients? And if so, why?
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate you doing that, by the way, on Tuesdays. It's a good reminder. So when I was in thinking about that, what stood out to me was the word focus. So you notice your focus, right? What you're focused on is what you're noticing. So with clients, I always talk about gratitude. I'm always saying, hey, let's, maybe today you kind of list 3 things you're thankful for. And of course, they're not in a great spot, right? So they're like, there's nothing. I got nothing. I don't have money. I don't have, I'm fighting all the time with people. I'm failing classes. So it's hard to find it, but it's really huge when we do find those pieces, because it can shift the focus and it helps build resilience. That's another reason. It helps build resilience. It reminds me too of solution focused therapy, another type of therapy approach. So in solution focused, we really want to get out of that problem saturated mindset. So you're overcome by problem. But when you can shift to solutions, you shift to strength, to gratitude, you can see change.
Oh, that's perfect. I love the way that you described that, because that kind of took it to a different level of understanding, at least for me. While on the topic of gratitude, discuss feeling gratitude for things that you want to accomplish in the future a little bit. And what I mean by that is, if I remember correctly, there was a podcast I was listening to recently. I think that it was, I want to say Rob Dyrdek and Ed Milet. And they were talking about basically manifesting, but by literally visualizing and feeling the emotion that you want to feel in the future for accomplishing a goal. And by visualizing and feeling that now, you are manifesting it into your life, because you are teaching yourself what it feels like to be there, to make it a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of that, or what do you think about? What do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah. So manifesting, that's huge right now, right? And I do like it. I really do. I have a friend who just recently actually told me to do something like that. She was like, picture yourself in the outfit you're wearing, in the job that you're in,
Mm-hmm.
feeling the feeling you're feeling in that moment, right? Feel it, picture it, think about it, notice it. And so I think that that can be really huge. I think you want to be careful with it because you don't want to be stuck in the future or stuck in the past,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really important to visualize that. And actually, when you asked that at first, I was like, oh, I don't know about having gratitude in the future. I guess I can think about feeling thankful for, hey, I'm working on this degree right now. So I'm thankful that, or I have gratitude that it will help me be more successful in the future, or I can help others in the future, or I'll reach my goal in the future. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, to be honest.
So for that, where you mentioned, I know how I'm going to feel when I graduate and what it's going to lead to.
Mm-hmm.
I think specifically when you're diving into that and trying to find that emotion of gratitude for what you're working toward, is how am I going to feel when I'm walking on that stage and that diploma is
Mm,
placed in my hand, and you close your
yeah,
eyes and you feel and you visualize exactly what's going to happen, and allow your body, the chemical reactions in your body will actually take over, and you'll
right,
feel like
right.
you are walking on that stage
Mm-hmm.
and you haven't even been there yet. So that was kind of how they were explaining what they were talking about. And to me, it blew my mind. And I was like, wow, this seems extremely effective
Yeah.
in training your mind
Mm-hmm.
so that your actions may follow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think it can be effective too, like getting you out of when you feel stuck, right? Let's just
Mm-hmm.
keep using school as an example. We're writing a huge paper. I'm stuck. I hate this. I don't want to finish this paper. I don't want to do this research.
Mm-hmm.
All right, hold up. Let me have this moment for gratitude and visualization, manifesting. Here's what it's going to feel like. That could get you out of being stuck, which is a key number one problem in probably in life in general, but definitely in therapy too, being
Right.
stuck.
Getting unstuck
Mm-hmm.
and just using as a source of motivation to remind yourself of what you're
Yes.
working toward.
Yes.
Now, there was something that you mentioned when we first started talking about this, and it made me think of negative aspects to gratitude.
Mm.
I believe I might have even shared something with you on that, because there was an episode on the Ed Milet show, and I can't think of her name right now, but he had an incredible guest on, and she talked about a negative aspect to gratitude. And I had never heard anybody talk about a negative
Yeah,
aspect to
yeah.
gratitude before. Now, I have heard of, you have, for character strengths that you have, there can be negative sides or dark sides to character strengths if
Mm-hmm.
used in the wrong way.
Right.
And
Right.
so it makes sense to me, but what she meant by that is she found herself using gratitude as a medicine,
Hmm.
as she was not like in a good situation, but she would say, you should be thankful for this or what you have, or like,
Oh, she was shooting herself.
yes. And so using gratitude, but in a negative way, that's
Mm-hmm.
not productive. Have
Yeah.
you heard of that, or can you elaborate on that at all?
Well, at first I get like defensive, right? I'm like, no, gratitude's not negative. What? But when it is used in that way, absolutely it would be. I
Mm-hmm.
had a supervisor that said, don't should on yourself, which, sounds like the other thing. It's not, so, but you shouldn't do that. No, I shouldn't say that. But yeah, not shooting on yourself, I think, is important because then your shame can really be built in that. It
Mm-hmm.
turns from gratitude to shame really quickly, and that can be dangerous. It reminds me too of toxic positivity.
Mm.
So, everyone thinks positive, be positive, good vibes only, right? Good energies. But that can get to a toxic place,
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to remember in that too, is it's important to feel the emotions that you feel.
Yes. Ah, yes.
You don't have to
Yes.
hide or pretend like I'm happy all the time. No, I get frustrated sometimes.
Yep.
I get angry sometimes. I get
Mm-hmm.
sad sometimes.
Yes.
Things can happen in life. you don't want to hide from those emotions.
No, you don't. You don't. And that reminds me of, I'm watching this new show on Apple TV called Shrinking. And it's a therapist whose wife died and then has to continue to be a therapist, right? And help others. So it's kind of a little comedy, but drama as well. But he says in one episode to one of his friends, he cut that friend out of his life. And the friend's like, why? Why did you do this? And he says to him, you wouldn't let me be sad. He was very, very much toxic positivity. It's gonna be
Wow.
fine. We're good. Let's get through it. No. Yeah, we've got to feel our emotions. I'm so glad you said that. Yes.
I'm glad the response you had because it leads perfectly into talking about relationships
Yes.
and
Yes.
and boundaries with relationships. I want to get into all of that. And I mean, you just said he cut a friend out of his life
Right.
for the toxic positivity. And honestly, that's not even the worst thing you could cut somebody out of your life for.
No.
At least they were being positive.
Right. Right. He thought he was doing something helpful, right? He thought he was being a good friend. But yeah.
It makes perfect sense though. And he understood that as a therapist of what it was. Not everybody might be able to identify the toxic
True.
positivity. So
Mm-hmm.
it's important to talk about and to understand what that is to be able to identify it.
Mm-hmm.
So, how does having healthy relationships in your life impact your mental well being?
Huge. Another huge thing. Very important. That would be considered in like therapist terms a resiliency factor or a protective factor. So the first thing we're asking people are, who is your support system? Who do you call in a moment of crisis? Who do you call when you're feeling so sad that you might feel like harming yourself? So those relationships are so huge. And if people don't have them, we're working to help them build that.
Hmm. So, I think this question ties in perfectly to it as well, which is a lot of people say that you are the sum of the five people you spend the most time with.
Mm,
Do you find that to be factual, somewhat factual? Like, how do you feel about that statement and
yeah.
believe it?
So I've definitely heard that before. Yeah, you are who you surround yourself with. We tell that to teenagers and young kids all the time, right? Make good friends, don't be with the bad influences, that sort of thing. And I do think that's important, but where I kind of like maybe would push back a little bit on that, and I've not done the research, so I could be completely wrong, but where I would push back on that a little bit is I really want myself and people to be authentic, whole individuals, right? And so, yeah, please surround yourself with people who are motivating you, encouraging you, are healthy themselves and whole people
Hmm.
themselves. But let's not have it be, well, I'm going to surround myself with these five people because I want to be that person. And I'm not. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're
Right.
changing who you are. And I see a lot of value in being around people who are different than you. I see a lot of value in that.
Definitely. Diversity is crucial. There's a lot of people who think that just because myself and another person don't think the same way,
Yeah.
that we can't be friends or we can't
Right.
have healthy, conversations or a relationship. But the truth is, if you have an open mind and healthy
Mhm.
communication,
Mhm.
you don't have
Mhm.
to have the same thoughts. You can approach conversations from your different standpoints, but with mutual respect you're able to maybe learn something you didn't know. And
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
may open your mind to thinking a different way. So it's very important to have those diverse relationships because people
Yes.
can bring their different backgrounds to the table.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I've learned things from people who, others might be afraid to be around or who have made huge mistakes in their life. They've brought knowledge and experience and joy to my life.
Hmm.
So I think that's very important.
All right. So we've talked some about other people and other
Yeah.
relationships.
Uh-oh,
This
okay.
one's for you. I see you put a heavy focus on prioritizing, relationships with your family, your friends,
Mhm.
you travel to
Mhm.
be with friends, you maintain relationships with friends that you went to college with.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
how do you balance your relationships and work and
Mhm.
everything in life?
Yeah. I'm like kind of giggling at that word balance right now because I've been in therapy myself, working on that for, gosh, over a year, because balance is important.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I think balance is incredibly important. It's incredibly important to have it between work and friends. And I think it's something that you have to be very intentional about. What I try to do is it is something I've worked really hard at, because I remember thinking that my sister and brother had just way better friends than me. I was like, wow, they've got such great friends. And I still think they do have great friends. But I was like, I feel like I have nobody. This was a long time ago. I was like, I feel like I have nobody. What can I do? And so I really was intentional about making connections with my friends and making sure that I wasn't just only focused on work or only focused on myself, but just how can I connect with somebody? How can I reach out, whether it's via text or sending a little note, or just being intentional about making time. It's about time management too, I think, which is another thing I'm really working on. But um, finding the time to prioritize those relationships.
Yes. Prioritization definitely can't be elaborated enough.
Mm-hmm.
And intentionality,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, just
Mm-hmm.
being intentional. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority.
Yeah, good
And
point.
that goes for goals that you're working on, and that goes for your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you spend too much time prioritizing an area that is not as important or does not actually for who you truly want to be and who you like truly want to surround yourself with, if it doesn't align and you're spending too much time on that area, it's taking away time from the other pots. It's taking away time from the
Yes.
other
Yeah.
relationships
Mm-hmm.
that you do want to put focus in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So let's get into boundaries.
Yeah, I love boundaries.
Uh, my father-in-law gave me the book Boundaries
Okay.
several years ago because we would have conversations all the time about family relationships, work even,
Mm-hmm.
and different things. And he was like, you need this book.
I love that.
And so happy he shared it with me. I learned
Mm-hmm.
so much from it. And now
Mm-hmm.
I make it a point to, you know, set clear boundaries.
Yeah.
And we all fall short. You can know about it and fall short sometimes, but I
Yeah.
am deliberate and intentional in
Mm-hmm.
trying to set clear boundaries and sticking to my boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So, are there any common boundaries that you see people struggle with establishing with others?
Yeah, I think too it's important to think about when I hear the word boundaries, I think first of like, are they healthy, rigid, or maybe too fluid? Are you in a healthy spot with them? Are you too rigid, meaning you're too cut off or too hyper focused on something? Or are you too fluid with them, meaning you need to work on your boundaries? You're just letting everything fly. So I think about that. And then I think about all the different types of boundaries. Before going to school for it, I would have never known. I was boundaries, yeah, physical boundaries, right? You
Mm-hmm.
might not be a person that likes to hug, but there's so many more boundaries than that.
Yeah,
There's emotional, spiritual, intellectual, time boundaries. And so the ones that I see people struggle with are that's a hard question, really, because I think it varies for each person. It's
mm-hmm.
different, but I think a lot of them can be, and in general, a way to sum it up might be relational boundaries. How do I make sure that I am myself a healthy person and have healthy boundaries when those around me who I love might be struggling?
Absolutely. So, phrased differently,
Hmm.
if someone were struggling with setting a boundary with like a family member or like
Hmm.
a really close friend, somebody that you're very close to,
Hmm.
if they're struggling with setting a boundary with them, what would be your advice, or like do you have a recommendation on a good approach for addressing your boundary with them?
I think I would first have to know, let's try to think of a for instance, maybe. Like I would need to know what is it that you are struggling with. So, for instance, you're struggling setting a boundary with a friend. It's a friend you really care about, but you see them, well, I'll just use myself for example. I've like you said, I have a lot of relationships that I love and care about. My biggest critique and feedback from friends are you're not making time for me. I don't see you. You're not, showing up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I hear that, and that's something that I work on. So, let's say a friend was struggling to set a boundary with that type of situation. My advice would be first to say, what's the value that you're looking for there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the value might be quality time. Maybe that's your love language. That's the value. And then how can you communicate that? We've got to talk about it, right? We don't want to just go from I'm upset, we're done. We try to discuss it, work through it. Um, I don't know. That's a hard question.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
So what I like there is you talked about when a friend is saying something like, "You don't spend enough time with me,"
Mm-hmm.
and yes, definitely there has to be communication there and setting boundaries, but there also, at least from my perspective, I think there has to be an understanding. What
Hmm.
when so as we've gotten older, relationships have changed with friends, and
Mm-hmm.
and for a while there were some relationships that I felt like that maybe they don't like want to be around me, maybe they don't like me as
Hmm.
much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized they're working on the things that they need to be fulfilled.
Mm.
They're either working, in their jobs and trying to build a successful career, or now they have a
Mm-hmm.
family and they're working to build their family, and or whatever it is. But that they have other things going on, and that's by understanding that I've learned to try to be more compassionate and understanding, and saying it doesn't mean they don't care about me.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
they may not have as much time for me now as they did at one time,
Right.
but maybe they're in a different season of life. And so
Yeah.
it's not just about time, but it requires some compassion, some understanding to really say, that person means me no ill will. They are a friend. We've been through this,
Yeah.
and this, or whatever together, but they're at a different place. And maybe that leads to that relationship being different. Maybe you connect in a different way,
Yeah.
or but it's about that communication, like you said.
Yes. Yes. I'm really glad you said that because it's about the communication, but it is so important. If someone was struggling with setting a boundary, I would also want them to do that exact thing. And I'd want myself to do that exact thing, turn kind of inward there, right? Why am I be curious with yourself? Why am I feeling hurt by this? What else might be going on? Maybe I'm
Mm-hmm.
catastrophizing, right? Just because they didn't respond back to my text doesn't mean they hate me now, So yeah, maybe like let's turn it inward a little bit and think, okay, what's going on here? Let's see. How do I want this relationship to look like? Let me reach out in a approach of just wanting to how do I want that person to perceive what I'm saying? Is it an attack? No. I just want to say I want to connect with you. How can we make
Mm-hmm.
that happen? You're important to me. I value your friendship. How can we connect? I know life changes. Relationships are going to change. We're going to be in different stages of life, places of
Mm-hmm.
life. But just yeah, having that piece where you look inward, I think that's huge.
I love it. So, what's your advice on establishing boundaries at work with, this
Yeah.
can be subordinates, peers, or
Mhm.
even
Mhm.
leadership. And I remember early on in my work career, a lot of times I found myself unhappy being at work,
Hmm.
and a lot of it had to do with not feeling like I could set clear boundaries or have certain boundaries. Or even
Hmm.
in some situations, like maybe that is a boundary of mine, but they don't care. I'm
Yeah.
here to work. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so what's your take on that? How do you approach boundaries in a professional setting?
Yeah, great question, and a really relevant question for everybody, especially for me moving into a more director type position. I've really got to think about that. What are
Hmm.
my boundaries as far as relationships with coworkers? What are my boundaries? I think that's a great question for what are your boundaries with time management at work?
Hmm.
Is work being um, like responsive, or is work adhering or aligning with my values? Or what happens, the caution if you don't establish boundaries with work is burnout. That would be the big thing that I would see happening, and that I've experienced myself, right? If you're
Hmm.
given everything and you're just trying to go above and beyond, maybe because the company doesn't respect, a boundary, or because you just haven't set that boundary, you're going to get burned out. And that's going to be no good for you, for your family, for, those around you. It's going to be no good. So I think it's really important to think about, to just think specifically, what are my boundaries at work
Hmm.
with all those different categories, right? Relationship, time, value, physical space, things like that.
All right. I want to circle back
Yeah.
to emotions.
Yeah.
So there's, I guess, a little bit of a story myself that I want to share, but I want to use it because this isn't about me at all. I want to use it as a just a learning platform
Hmm.
on understanding emotions. And I spent a lot of my childhood and even throughout college, a lot of time angry.
Hmm.
And it I found myself angry very often, and my thinking, I was like, I don't want to be angry,
Hmm.
and I was finding myself angry so frequently. I didn't like who I was. I was like, I don't want to be this, but I don't know how to stop being angry.
Yeah.
I happened to be walking through an airport and see a book as I walk past the bookstore and have time to kill that said anger
Whoa.
on the front of the book.
Whoa.
And since I had some time to kill, I was like, I'll check this out.
Yeah.
But a takeaway from me for reading that book, and it's something that I want to share and want to talk about because not everybody might hit that point at the right time and walk past the right book that just
Right.
happens to open the door to them.
Hmm.
But I learned that it was okay to be angry.
Hmm.
Being angry was not the problem. It was how I was thinking about and responding to the anger.
Yeah. Yes.
And so learning to accept yourself and accept your anger, recognize it when it happens,
Hmm.
but learn to regulate your response to it and learn to say, okay, this is anger. What is a healthy way that I can deal with this? I might need to go take a walk. I might have to separate myself from the situation
Hmm.
and then calm down and then take time to think about what actually happened and why am I angry?
Hmm.
Start to ask yourself questions
Yes.
so that you can gain an understanding. And ultimately, I learned a lot from that, but I just wanted to bring it up because we got on the topic of emotions earlier.
Yeah.
And that was a piece, just learning that it is okay to feel that.
Yes.
But what is your take, and is there any advice or tips or lessons that you might be able to offer to anybody who doesn't have a book that they walk by at the right time when they're
Yeah.
tired of feeling that way?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm glad you brought up anger because that can be the loudest emotion, right? That's what we might feel the
Hmm.
strongest. Anger is also a secondary emotion. So when we talk about it with kids, we might talk about the anger iceberg. So the emotion we're seeing and we're feeling is that anger, but what's below it? Are we sad? Are we scared? The easiest example I can think of is you're in traffic, someone slams on their brakes in front of you, you slam on your brakes, instantly you're mad, right?
Hmm.
Some road rage. But then if you took a step back, you're like, well, I was scared. I thought I was about to get in a wreck. So you kind of think about that. And I love that you said that it's okay to be angry. It's just how are you responding? How are you managing that anger? but knowing that reminds me of mindfulness too. So mindfulness is a practice that I find very important because it's about noticing your emotion without judgment. So I'm noticing that I'm angry. I'm going to be curious as to why, and then I'm going to move through it. I'm going to let it go if I need to. Or if it's something I need to maybe work through, I'm going to figure out some steps or resources to work through that.
Absolutely. And a thing that worked for me was separating from the situation, asking myself the questions like, what's going on here? And then once I was able to calm down and my body chemistry was able to regulate, I could go back and have a more thoughtful conversation. Like I could understand more clearly why I reacted the way I did, what actually happened in the situation, and then discuss it. Maybe I had a valid reason for being angry. And then we talk about it. This is why, and the reason that I felt that way. And then you're able to communicate. And it's not always even another person you can talk to, but you can at least start to understand it in yourself. Maybe just a situation happens. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. You're not going to see them to talk to them about why that
you're not going to get to process.
But another metaphor that I love on that topic, and when it comes to emotions, is thinking of your emotions like a garden. And I'm Katie's big on plants, I know.
Yep.
But which seeds are you watering the most? If you spend a lot of time dwelling on anger or frustration or negative emotions, you're watering those seeds. If you're holding on to relationships that constantly feed those emotions, you're watering those seeds. And so you spend more and more time watering the negative emotions, and eventually they grow so big that they overshadow the positive emotions and don't allow them to grow. They don't have space to grow.
Yep. I love that because I love the garden metaphor. I'm going to remember that. I love that. It reminded me too, and maybe we can link it in or put a, link with this YouTube video, but there's an old Native American, I believe it is, story it's the wolf that you feed. So if you're feeding that anger, exactly what you said with the garden metaphor, exact same, but think of it almost if you're thinking anger, it's a wolf, it could take over. But the important piece is what you said before too, is honoring that anger, validating it. There was a reason, or it's okay that I'm angry. There's no bad emotion. There's difficult ones, but there's none that we should feel bad about.
Definitely. And so one that I hadn't even planned to talk about, but it just popped in my head because I know that it's something a lot of people deal with. But what about stress?
Oh, yeah. So that is a good question. And it's interesting you said that because I'm reading this book about realizing that stress is influencing a lot of our responses, which sounds kind of like, common sense. But thinking about a way that we need to manage that stress that is healthy, that could honestly be another boundary piece, I would think. How much am I letting affect me? How much am I putting into this? Being curious still. Why is this stressing me so much? All right, what can I do with this stress? Similar to what you said with the anger. Do I need to go for a run? Is it something physical I can do to get it out? Is it talking it out? Is it going to a friend, a therapist? Is it, journaling, music, something? Just thinking about your coping skills to manage that would be huge so that it doesn't take you over to a point where physically, like I said earlier, we're connected, right? So if you're so stressed out and you're not managing it at all, you're going to start feeling sick all the time. You're going to start neglecting relationships, So yeah, it's important to not focus just on the stress, but instead say, I'm stressed. What can I do with that? What can I do to manage it? Work through it.
That makes me think of, I had a leader who asked me what kind of leader I wanted to be and shared with me some different models. He was like, read some of this, learn about some different models of leadership and see what do you like to implement, or what would you want to implement as a leader? But a method that I really liked, and I bring it up because although I learned about it as a method of leadership, I believe it's a great way of approaching your emotions and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Socratic method of leadership,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is to ask questions, uh, dig deep, ask questions
yeah.
until you just can ask no more, until you
Mm-hmm.
really get to the root to understand that emotion or that
Yeah.
thinking or whatever it is that you
Yes.
have going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that because it also goes back to a garden metaphor, right? The root. So if you're just picking the weed from the top and not understanding what might be the problem or presenting issue going on, you're not getting to the root of it. So yeah, I like
Absolutely.
that.
So we're through the majority of the questions. We'll get
Okay.
into a little wrap up.
Okay.
What are one or two of the most important keys to success when it comes to mindset, relationships, managing your emotions, anything that we went over today? What are one or
Yeah.
two keys to success from your perspective?
I think what sticks out for me the most, and we've been talking about it today, is intention. So really setting a daily intention. What, each day, picturing it as a new day. My dad growing up, he would start every day with us. He would like clap his hands and be like, "It's going to be a great day." And we would be like, "Oh my gosh, dad, that's enough." But now looking back on it, I'm like, "Wow, what a blessing that was to have somebody pointing me in the direction of a positive mindset." Even if the day wasn't great, picking out something to be grateful about in it. I think that's huge too. So I think thinking about it each day is setting a daily intention. And I think self-compassion is a huge piece of that too.
Hmm.
Really working on being compassionate with yourself. Maybe I'm really trying hard to reach this certain goal or to have this specific type of day, life, mindset. And maybe I missed, maybe I didn't do very well today. But how can I be compassionate with myself? I think that's
Hmm.
really important so that you can focus on just setting your daily intention each day.
I want to elaborate on both of those.
Okay.
So the intentionality piece in the story
Mhm.
with your dad,
Mhm.
love that. And
I think he got it from Jerry Maguire. I just want to put it out there.
wherever it came
Yeah, wherever
from,
it came from.
I try to do that.
Yeah.
Aaliyah is not a morning person.
Me neither.
Let me just say, when she gets out of the bed in the mornings, it's usually not with a smile.
Yep.
And I still greet every day with a good morning and a hug and a kiss.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when it's time to go off to school, with a hug and have a great day, like have fun,
Mhm.
learn,
Yeah.
you know just positive things. And although
Mhm.
I mean, I do believe the energy can be contagious sometimes, so I have to try to not let her like upsetness in the morning uh
Influence you.
influence,
Yeah.
because I'm trying to bring the positivity.
Right.
But I'm glad you brought that up,
Yeah.
because I think that's important, that regardless of surroundings, and
Mhm.
that it's important to be intentional about how you want the day to be,
Yes.
starting it off positively.
Yep, and that's and intentional with your relationships too in that same way, right? How I
Hmm.
want my day to go, how I want my connections to go.
Yeah,
Yeah. And Aaliyah's gonna see the value in that. Just like I do now, looking back.
one day. And then on self compassion, Aaliyah actually, when I did the mini kids episode with
Yeah.
her,
Yeah.
I loved her response. And honestly, it was such a just authentic, genuine response.
I
I
love
asked her,
that.
"What do you do if you forget to do your daily actions today?
Mhm.
If you forget to practice?" And she said, "I do it the next day."
Yes.
That is exactly what you have to do.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you brush it off. That was a day, and honestly, you need those days too,
Yeah.
for your health and how you feel about yourself. Like,
Mhm.
maybe I have nutrition goals, but every once in a while I need tacos and margs.
Yep. Yep.
So it's important to remember to have that self-compassion. So I love that you brought it
Yes.
up. Wanted to relate it to Aaliyah's point because
That's a great example of self-compassion too. Yeah,
yeah.
I do it the next day. I don't, because if you don't have self-compassion, if you don't have that mentality of like, yeah, maybe I do need, you need to hold yourself responsible, right?
Hmm.
So like maybe I did make a mistake that I need to hold myself responsible for, but I've got to be compassionate with myself about it. I'll do it the next day. If not, we're going to get into shame.
Hmm.
That's a whole thing we don't want to be a part of.
Right. You can evaluate. You can say, hey, do I want to carry that behavior over into the next day?
Right.
It was it in line with my goals
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
where I want to get to?
Mm-hmm.
If it was not, I change it today.
That's right.
Past is in the past.
Simple.
Now we're moving forward, and don't dwell on it.
Yes. Yes.
I'm glad we got there. Is there anything you'd like to share in regards to relationship goals? A question I didn't ask, something that
Yeah.
you think would be just helpful to share to the audience for them to take away and apply to their journey?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think something that we've been saying a lot today, kind of that I've been hearing, is just the intentionality piece and also the stay curious piece. I think that's really important for all relationships. We mentioned it when we talked about friendships. You know, this
Hmm.
person, I'm not connecting with them like I used to. Let me be curious about that. In romantic relationships, very important. You know, you're going to be with this person, your intention, the goal is to be with them for the remainder of life, right? You
Hmm.
got to stay curious. We're always changing people. We're going to change our physically, we're going to change mentally, we might change. But growth, that's the hope, right? That's part of
Hmm.
the journey, growth. So I think staying curious in life is so important. Empathy, so important. So when we're curious, our first response shouldn't be, it's something bad, this is why it's happening, but just let me, maybe I don't agree with that person's, standpoint or emotional response even,
Hmm.
but can I connect with it though? Can I put myself in that perspective? Doesn't mean you agree with it, but can I just imagine what it might feel like to feel that way? And another thing too with relationships that I really like, this is from Gottman. Gottman is a marriage, highly evidenced marriage counseling, well, relationship counseling, uh, therapeutic approach. They've done tons of research. It's really cool to see because a lot of like research that you see with therapists is like old school, right? They're not here anymore. The
Hmm.
Gottmans are here. They've got a lab. They're still doing research. So it's cool to see the stuff they're coming out with. Great books. So I'd like to leave just this piece that I think about that's important in all relationships is the positive aspect ratio. So 5 to 1. So for every one negative kind of interaction, we need 5 positives. I know that sounds scary. I know it sounds scary. They don't have to be grand, right? They don't have to be, oops, I, did one little mistake and now I have to buy you flowers and send you a card and do all sorts of things. But it's being intentional with what are those positive moments of connection. You got to build up. Gottman also has the emotional bank account, right? So you want to be
Hmm.
building, building, building with your relationships. That's what I talk about intentionally with my friendships too. And it goes the same for romantic relationships. I'm intentional daily to make connection, give a compliment here or there, take out the trash, connect with someone that in some sort of positive, meaningful way.
Hmm.
Simple, simple. We can keep it simple, but there's got to be that 5 to 1. So for every one negative, we need 5 positive. And that's a marker and indicator, evidence based, of success in relationships.
That is fantastic. And I love that you brought up the bank account.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Those positive interactions being deposits into your account
Yes.
and the intentionality piece to it, because you can overdraw an account
Yes.
and it can be very hard to come back from. You
Absolutely.
can spend years of making deposits and building trust, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes one withdrawal and you can be overdrawn.
Yep.
So I love that. I'm so glad you brought it up. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here
Yeah.
today. Thank you for just sharing your knowledge, your experience. I really think that there's so many great takeaways that people will have from our conversation today. So just appreciate your time and your friendship.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you all for tuning in, for joining, for allowing us to join your journey. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like it, comment to join the conversation, subscribe on your listening platform, leave a 5-star review. And if you found the information useful, share it. Our goal is to grow and is to reach as many people as possible. Thank you for joining the conversation, and let's grow together.